Welcome back to Mixing Up Success. Today's guest is someone who reached out to me in the most delightful way. She writes murder mysteries set in a small Oregon bake shop, and she works with bakeries like mine to make sure she gets the details right. Ellie Alexander is the author of the long-running Bakeshop Mystery Series published by Macmillan, which follows pastry chef Jules Capshaw as she returns home to run her family's artisan bake shop, Tort, in the charming hamlet of Ashland, Oregon. The series has more than 22 books and counting, every single one with recipes tucked in the back, because in Ellie's world, the baking is just as important as the mystery. I picked up Meet Your Baker a few weeks ago, and I have not been able to stop. I immediately related to Jules in a way I wasn't expecting. Today, we are talking about what it looks like to build a creative career around the world of baking, what Ellie has learned from the real bakers she's spent years researching, and why a small family bake shop keeps showing up as the heart of a great story. Ellie, welcome to Mixing Up Success.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And, in my world, you are the rock star. So I'm like, oh, a real baker. This is great.
Oh, well, thank you. I think bakers are some of the hardest working people I know. And so I think your books highlight that as well, of how much care goes into the product. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you were inspired to write these series.
Yeah, for sure. So I wrote my very first mystery when I was in second grade, and food was such a part of my formative years. My dad was an English teacher and focused on Shakespeare, and my
Okay.
mom was a school therapist, and she was your classic home baker, so like Betty Crocker style, everything was homemade, but
Yeah.
it never looked beautiful. Like she did not have the pastry level skills for that. Whereas my dad on the weekends would spend an entire Sunday crafting an 8-layer mocha almond buttercream tort, and he'd make his own apricot jam. And so that was sort of always in the background. And then I grew up in Vancouver, Washington, just right across the river
Yeah.
from you, and well, sort of across the river, right? And we would go to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival because my dad was such a Shakespeare aficionado. And so when I decided I wanted to write this series, I was trying to think of like, what's the quintessential cozy village? And Ashland really meets all those notes for like an old Agatha Christie style,
Yeah.
setting. And then, of course, food just kind of had to weave its way into the series. And 22 books later, it's a lot of murder and it's a lot of recipes.
Yeah. But I am on my third book
Yeah.
right now, because I just started a few weeks ago, and they're so good. Like the mystery part, I love a good mystery, right? I love a good murder mystery. And it's they just you have so much detail in terms of the baking pieces that it's so relatable as a baker. And it's so fun. I mean, I don't want anybody dying in my bake shop,
Right.
but
Yeah.
'cause it would be a real nightmare. But
Yeah, right.
no, but they're such a fun read, and I really enjoy them. I also have to share, because you just said that you wrote your first story in second grade, and my son just finished third grade, and you graciously sent me a handful of your books, and I had them sitting on the counter, and my son looked at them and he was like, "Murder mysteries?" And you have sparked him. He is on a murder mystery, like, ext he's trying to find every possible murder mystery that he could, and I literally was like, "This is what it's about." It's about inspiring just all people, and because of you, in the last month, he has read, like, 3, like, complete chapter books, just, like, boom, 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 and he has ordered at the library a bunch of books. So look at you.
Oh, that makes my heart so happy. And we'll have to talk after the podcast because I've got Rex for him then.
Oh, good.
But, so this particular style is called a cozy mystery, and
Yeah.
they really are meant to be just pure escapism. You're supposed to step into this world. Yes, of course, there's a body, but that's kind of secondary. These are the opposite of like a CSI, right? Because a
Yeah.
pastry chef is invited onto the crime scene to help solve the murder. But really, these stories are so much more about the community, the village, like building this world that we all want to sink into. And I think the parallel is having spent so much time researching what really does go into running any kind of bakery, bake shop, home based, regardless of the size, is we all kind of have that fantasy wish fulfillment of like, oh, I'd love to own a bakery. Oh my gosh, it's such hard work, right? And
Yeah.
so these books are just meant to sort of like take you away into a world where you get to be a sleuth for the day and not really worry about anything else.
Yeah. I'm really glad you share that because actually 2 years ago, I kind of was sitting down and like reflecting. Yeah, I always do like an annual, goal setting and all the things. And I was kind of reflecting and I was like, I don't remember the last time I just read for joy. Like just picked up a book to read for fun. And so I set a goal 2 years ago and I was like, I'm going to read X amount of books just for fun, just for joy, pure joy. And so I did, and that was 2025. I got back into reading and I forgot how much it feeds our soul
Yeah.
and how important it is. And just doing that, just forcing myself to say, I need to read has sparked so much creativity in me.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and so, a mystery that or a series like yours is like, I just hit the jackpot in terms of that escape, right? That, ability to just kind of step out of your real world and into this, land that, is fun and exciting, and you don't know exactly what's gonna happen next, and because it's such a long series, you really bond with the characters.
Right. Yeah, they get to really feel like real people. That's something I struggle with in my own head, though. When I was first writing the series, I was living in Vancouver, Washington. And then eventually, when my son was in middle school, we moved to Ashland. And I'd been writing about Ashland for so long and obviously visiting for long stretches of time, spending lots of
Mhm.
time in bake shops and coffee shops and all the places there. Um, and once we moved there, it was even more charming than I had even made it out to be in my head. But no joke. In the morning, I would wake up and think like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna walk down to Tort, my fictional bake shop, does not exist, and
Yeah.
get a coffee from Andy." Again, a character in my head where I'd be like, "Wait a minute, no, no." Like, so sometimes you're like, "These are too real. Hold up." Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm only 3 books in, and I'm like, "I need to go visit this place." Like, you have created a place that as a baker, I'm like, "I want to go visit this bake shop."
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's an incredible story. So, tell us because you do weave a lot of, the baking into it, and you weave the recipes into the story, and then the recipes are actually in the back of the book, which I'm excited to try some of them. But tell us how that played out. How did you decide to do that, and what inspired that?
Yeah, so this particular genre of cozy mysteries are culinary. So one of the things for readers in that escapism is that you always get this bonus at the back of the book, which is recipes. Now, I am not a professional baker at all.
Yeah.
I think you know the old adage where people will be like, "I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV." I feel like I'm not a pastry chef, but I play one on the pages of my books. Like I know
Yeah.
enough now to get by, and we could do a little chat into like what I've done for research, but I think it's so important to not pull readers out of the story when the recipe piece kind of shows up. So I'm always conscientious of being in the flow of Jules, my main character, her world. And so she runs this small family bake shop. And so, maybe as she's mixing through who the suspects are, then she's actually got her hands in the bread dough and she's working that way. And then when I'm writing a first draft, because I always write 3 or 4 drafts. It's not like
Mhm.
your first, it's probably like, you do your crumb coat on the cake. It's not done yet, right?
Yeah.
Um, or you float a cookie. It's not ready for the fine detail work. So in a first draft, I'm usually just whatever's top of mind. These books really lean into seasonality too. So
Mhm.
it might be like I'm writing a book about fall and I'm thinking about cardamom, and I'll just kind of have a placeholder as I'm writing. Jules is making cardamom something. And then
Yeah.
the next like layer, the second or third pass that I do on edits, then I'll start to really think like, okay, what is it? And can I actually bake it? Because I bake every recipe that ends up
Yay.
in the books too, 2 or 3 times. Because again, I don't want to put a recipe out that readers are like, oh, that didn't work at all, Ellie.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I I can definitely, well, I'm sure you've spent enough time, but so many people bake as a therapy, right? Like
Right.
it not only does reading allow our minds to escape, baking allows our minds to escape, right? And so many bakers actually develop a passion for baking because of the mind escape. And I mean, I'm
100%.
guilty of that. I needed a way to shut off my brain, and cookie decorating allowed that. And so when you talk about Jules processing these murder mysteries while she's kneading the dough, 100%. I'm like right there. I'm like, that is every baker I know. While their hands are busy, they can't pick something up to distract them. They are processing whatever it is that's going on in their life. And that is
Yes, it's so
so
true.
relatable.
Well, and it's just that idea of like we aren't always so present in our lives right now with how connected we
Yes.
are, pros and cons, right, in this
Mhm.
digital age that we're living in. So for me, you're talking about like having this epiphany of needing to go back to reading for joy. That's baking for me because writing is my job and I find so much joy and I have to be super present and in this other world when I'm writing. But for me then when I'm in the kitchen, I'm just like, "Oh, that's right. It's such a sensory experience. I'm feeling it, I'm tasting it. It's like a meditation." Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. So I think that's where you and I can relate a lot, in that we are both in a very creative business model, right? Like
right.
we're having to create these things all of the time, whether it's a storyline or whatever it is. And that to me is very draining. So I have to have creative outlets. I
Yes.
have to get my mind somewhere else so that I can recharge and refuel to bring it back to my work. How does that work for you?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I talk about this so much. Yeah, because I don't think maybe from the outside everybody understands like
Mhm.
it might, I mean, for you, it is way more physically taxing than for me to be standing here writing at my desk, right? But there is this other energy that you tap into when you're in that creative flow, and it's exhausting in its own way. So for me, so much of it is moving my body. I have all these routines that I do. I swim in the morning, I go for a long walk or a hike. I try to like break things up. That's usually when I have like those inspirations that come through if I've been stuck on a story and then I get outside and away from my desk, baking, reading, anything sensory. I am not artistic. I'm so envious. I mean, like watching your cookie decoration. Although I have taken a few cookie classes and met bakers over the years where I've been like, "Oh, you can teach me. Okay, I'm teachable." Like that's always like a great feeling too. And then I spend a lot of time physically in bake shops, coffee houses, behind the scenes with real professional bakers like you because that it's still like it's going to end up somewhere on the page or it's going to be in the back of my head so I can kind of speak with authority as Jules, but
Mhm.
it's also not the same level of taxing creative energy that goes into putting together a 60,000 word first draft.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your process in the bake shops, because I'm not gonna lie, when I read from your Jules perspective, I'm in the working kitchen. I am there. I can just visualize very well what's happening, who's doing what. And when you just said that, I just sit in a bakery or whatever, I'm like, "Well, that's it." Like you're literally observing what's happening and putting it into your stories as if you were there. And you've
Yeah.
done such a good job of that. So tell us how that works and, what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a crutch for me. So I learned thanks to TikTok a few years ago. I was in my late 40s when I finally realized I have something called aphantasia, where it's like you see nothing. Like if you close your eyes, it's just black for me.
Okay.
I don't see anything visual. And so I am a real kinesthetic, auditory writer. But in order to get the details and make you feel like Tort is real and that you're in Ashland, I need those sensory experiences. So I will go with my trusty notebook and I will just be an observer and I will take copious notes and pictures and I'll think about sights and smells and weave all of that in. Now, because I knew I was going to be writing a professional pastry chef, when I first started the series, I was able to go to a culinary institute at Clark College and spend 3 days shadowing the chefs. And I've had so many incredible bakers and pastry chefs over the years let me come and like shadow them for a day. And baristas and coffee roasters. I did a coffee tour in Costa Rica. And there's something that comes through if you are physically experiencing it, at least for me as a writer, that yes, I could watch videos, but I have to actually like have I'm doing this with my hands on a podcast. Like I have to physically like get my hands dirty, I guess, or like be
Yeah.
in the space to really understand it.
Well, I'm really glad you say that because I believe that unless you experience the environment, how can you really write about it? You know? And so I'm sure that, there are ways that people can do that, but I think that's why your books are so relatable for bakers because I feel like you're there. I feel like I'm in that kitchen. I feel like you knew exactly what needed to happen in that kitchen, and I can feel as if it's my own space, and it's just so relatable. Like that's when I picked up my first book, I was blown away at how much I related just to how you described the working kitchen and all of the things because I haven't read very many books that just feel like this could be my space. Like this is my work environment every day, but now we've woven in this mystery that makes it very exciting and I get to escape, right? S
Well, and I will say, the best thing about being a fly on the wall and an observer is I often get these juicy little tidbits for murder too. So, in the very first book, Meet Your Baker,
yeah,
there's this villain who dies, and this is not a spoiler because we meet her on the first page.
yeah.
And that is all based on a real experience. I was at Mix in Ashland, which is the coffee shop kind of where I visualized Tort would sit, and I had my notebook and I'm just taking notes and I'm observing everyone. And this woman comes in and she cuts the line and she's just atrocious to the barista and berating him that her coffee was supposed to be 180 degrees and it's only 172. And she's just so obnoxious. And I'm sitting in the corner and I'm like, well, you can die in a book. And then she became my first victim. So, like, it works both ways. You get baking tips and murder tips.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny you say that, and, I don't want this to sound bad or anything, but there was a piece of me that was like, "Oh, yeah, I know that
Yeah,
customer."
right. Exactly. I know. I know. We've met that
Because
person
it's
before.
true,
I
it's
know,
like,
right?
if you're running a bakery, there's always somebody that's like, "Did you do this? And what
Mhm.
temperature?" And, is, like, nitpicking, and you're like, "Why don't you just bake your own stuff?"
Right,
That'd be
exactly.
But so it's so funny because, yeah, so my instinct when I started that one was like, "Oh, I know that customer."
Yeah. And then the best thing, because these are cozy, right? And they're meant to be kind of campy, is
Yeah,
I get to play up the villainous piece of that. So it's a
yeah.
little wish fulfillment too, where we do see people behaving badly in the real world. And I'm like, well, you can meet your just desserts in this book then, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's incredible. So when I reached out to you, you shared that, your readers will forgive, like, the most outlandish murder plots, because they know, like, it's that's you're making up these plots. But if you get the baking wrong in your book, they let you know. So tell us a little bit about that.
They let me know. I know it is so ironic because at this point in time, poor Ashland in real life has like less than 30,000 residents, has had a high body count of murder in a short amount of time, which you
Oh.
would think most people would be up in arms about. But no, I don't ever hear about that. The murder plot can be so ridiculous. But if I, have the wrong temperature or she hasn't tempered something the right way or sifted, I will just get so much feedback from readers. And what I think is the crux of that is we don't want anything that pulls us out of the story. When you're reading for an escape, you
Yeah.
want to be immersed in that world. You want to feel like you were saying at the beginning, like I want Jules to feel like she's doing her job and we're going along because we're reading these books from her point of view. We're in her world with her. And so I think it's jarring then. And this is why I do spend so much time trying to make sure I get as much right as I can about what it's like to really work in any kind of professional kitchen. Those are those things that are jarring and bring us out of the story, which is why then I think readers will let me know if I've made a mistake. And then the other thing that I hear a lot from readers that I just have to laugh at, and I'm sure you probably get it even more so, is because there are recipes in the back, it'll be like, well, Ellie, can I substitute this? Can I do this? I'm like, I don't know. First of all, I'm not a professional chef. And second of all, I have no idea because I made it this way 3 times to make sure that it was right. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because yeah, I share recipes and I follow and connect with a lot of bakers that share recipes, and the questions that we get about substitutions is
Right.
like, well, why didn't you just look for a recipe with
I
that?
know, right? Yes.
And it's so silly. But yeah, I mean, recipes are written to the recipe and it's a guideline. And if you want to try a substitution, that's go for it. But there's no guarantees it's going to work, right?
Right. Exactly.
That's really interesting. Well, to your point about, I hadn't really thought about that. To your point about like if you get the bake wrong in the book, like you said, she didn't temper something correctly or whatever it is. I actually can understand, like, I would you're right. It's like the murder plots, it's like, this isn't how a pastry chef isn't gonna be along
Right.
with the investigator, like,
Right.
that's not even real.
Hmm.
But I think there is a piece of me that's like, well, if you get the bake wrong, who are you? Obviously, this is, like, not even real.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. We're stepping into a fictional world, and that all has to be really grounded in reality. And then the rest of the
Yeah.
piece, going into it, like, okay, yeah, there's no chance that the police are going to be
Yeah.
like, so, Danny, come on over.
Yeah, until you explained that, I hadn't really thought about that, but I can exactly see what you're saying that yeah, I think if I'm reading along and I'm like this is completely wrong, my brain is going into like all the things that are wrong with this bake instead of enjoying the story
Yeah.
and being present in the story. So that's really interesting. The one thing that I love about the books is like for a book club, now you've got a like 2 in 1, you've got a book and a cookbook. So you
That's right.
can do you get people that, make the recipes in their book club with the books?
Yes, and I get invited to them sometimes, which is
Yay!
so fun. The
Yeah.
best thing is getting reader emails, DMs, pictures of what they've baked. It's been really fun over the years because some professional pastry chefs have made things for events where I'm like, oh, that actually worked. Okay, good. I mean, Jules is not measuring in grams and everything
Oh, yeah.
because the recipes are made for home chefs. But yeah, it's such a delight when book clubs make recipes from the book. And then you get to eat it, right?
Yeah. I actually have plans to make a few of the recipes I've kind of like noted, because yeah, they look really fun and they also just like if I'm going to a party, right? And I need to take something and I just want something new or whatever. I flagged a few of your recipes because I was like, oh, also it becomes a conversation starter. right? It's like,
Yeah.
well, how'd you come up with this recipe? Where'd this come from? And I've thought, well, this is a great conversation piece for whatever party I have to attend.
I love that.
Yeah. So, so you grew up with a lot of baking in the family. You've shadowed a lot of bakers, and you enjoy baking yourself. So, I think when you talk about you say, "Well, I'm not a pastry chef," and I relate to that. That okay, we don't give ourselves these titles, but I mean, Ellie, you know a lot about baking.
I mean, yes, but I that's all been osmosis, like what I've picked up from people like you over the years, which is fun because I do love to weave in tips of like, oh, maybe you just add a little bit of cornstarch to your flour to get your cookies to do the thing, or that
Yeah.
piece. I think for me, I do love to bake. Everything that I bake that ends up in the back of the book as far as recipes has been tested by my family, tested by neighbors. Usually the baking is the last thing I do. So by bake 3, my neighbors will see me coming and be like, You're good. Just like it was great the first time. Don't bring me another." But I wish that I had the talent to like, I mean, your cookies are spectacular. And that is jewels in my head. To be able
Yeah.
to have that other level of artistry that goes along with baking is
Yeah.
not my skill set. I inherited my mom's just like it's gonna taste good, but presentation maybe not quite there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great. But I want to get back to the identity piece just for a minute because I'm not a professionally trained chef. I'm a self taught baker. And it's taken me a long time to consider myself a professional baker. Um, Mainly because like there is like this like, well, you didn't go to school for this or you didn't study this. And my background has been primarily my professional background teaching and business and food safety and food science, like that side of things. So understanding how kitchens work and a lot of the things that the home baker doesn't see in terms of how a kitchen runs and protocols and why we're tracking all of the things we're doing. I did have in a professional background in food science and food safety, but not professionally trained chef. And I've been running a bakery for since 2019, and I bake about somewhere between 30 and 40,000 decorated cookies a year. But literally, it was like 3 weeks ago. I was open. My shop's different. I do a lot of pre-sale stuff and direct sales, so I don't have a storefront except for occasionally. And I was open for my June storefront, and I decided to have a bakery case. I was like, I am a bakery. Like, I can make whatever I want. And so I made a bunch of stuff just for fun. And I told my husband, I'm like, I think I am a baker now.
Could I be a baker? Am I a baker? Yeah.
I mean, I was like,
Yeah.
I I am a baker now. I am a baker. And it's so funny because there's so many things that like let's say this world of social media. Like I literally just share what I wanted for so long. I was just sharing my artwork and I was sharing what I felt like for the day. And I still do so much of that. However, I have a whole person that like, keeps me on track and makes sure that we're actually marketing and using it for the right things. But at the same time, somebody will say, "Wow, you're such an influencer." And I'm like, "Yeah, right. I'm not an influencer." But then I'm like, "Wait a minute. Like sometimes we have to step back and say, "No, I am this thing and I do have the power to identify myself as whatever that is." And so I just think it's really interesting because in creative careers, I think sometimes we struggle to find or even own our own identities.
I think that's so true, and it took me a long time to do that same thing in terms of being a writer. I
Yeah.
had multiple series published by big publishing houses, and I was like, I don't think I mean, like, this is fun, but, like, is it wasn't until I finally, like, quit my day job that I was like, "Oh, I think I can call myself a writer," and now I teach new writers and I coach writing,
Yeah.
and we spend a lot of time in sessions just talking about, like, you can own that, like, nobody else needs to give you that title. You can, like, embrace that for yourself and step into it. And one of my favorite quotes that I have on my wall is comparison is the thief of joy, because I think we can get so wrapped up into that idea of like, oh, but this person is doing this and this person's doing that. Like, what are you like? No, sink into your own world. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's big
And
truth there.
I just several things you said sparked that in me that I just wanted to spend a minute maybe inspiring other creatives out there that even if you're just selling a few things, you are a baker, you are a writer, you are that thing, and you can also be a bunch of other things, right? But sometimes I think I struggle with it. I mean, I'm running a six-figure bakery selling
Right. Yeah.
thousands of cookies, and
Yeah.
I have, all by all measure, a successful bakery. And literally 3 weeks ago, I was like, told my husband, "I think I'm a baker now."
Yeah. Right. I know. I know. Yeah. Yes.
So, it's just amazing, I think, sometimes how we don't see it in ourselves, when we're in these creative fields.
Yeah. And I do think there is that level because it's not as defined maybe as like a traditional sort of job role where it's like, oh, you
Mhm.
meet these milestones, these bench stones, you have an actual title to your job. Because what I've learned from
Yeah.
spending so much time talking to bakers of various sizes is it's that you're not just baking, right? You're doing all the other pieces of owning the business. The same is true for writing. So it's hard to like wrap it up tangibly. And maybe that's part of then why we struggle to be like, oh no, I am this.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I wanna go back to your series and Jules, your lead character, because I think there's um her stories of coming home and really finding her footing and buildings that something that is hers is kind of what we're talking about in what we're doing. I mean, I literally built my business because I wanted something that was mine that really helped me feel like I was living a purposeful, meaningful life for me. And I related a lot to Jules in that coming home to the family bake shop and really finding herself. So tell me where that kind of came from in your plot or in your story.
Yeah, I mean, for me, even though these are light escape reads, I want to write really rich characters that you get attached to, that have challenges just like we do, that have emotional growth arcs too, especially
Yeah.
over the course of a long series. And I came to writing through grief and loss because I lost my mom to young onset Alzheimer's when she was in her early
Mm.
50s. And I was pregnant with my first and only son at the time. And so I was
Wow.
caring for her and watching her lose all the skills that he was slowly gaining. And I'd been working in a job that I wasn't super happy with. And then after she died, I kept thinking, like, what do I want to do? Like that really cracked me open to this idea of like, wait
Yeah.
a minute, like I have to carve out my own path forward and I have to sink into things that bring me joy, that spread joy. Like so much of reading for me while I was caring for her and through that process was escaping that grief. And so Jules isn't exactly at that level, but that was really kind of the inspiration behind the scenes of what I wanted for her, and that idea of if we go home again, who are we and how do we redefine home? Um
Yeah.
and then Jules' mom Helen in the book is really my mom. So I get to sort of bring her to life again on the page too, which is just fun for me and sweet.
The minute you started describing your mom, I
Yeah.
instantly was like, "Wow, that
Hold on.
sounds like Helen."
Yeah.
Yeah. I I just think it was, such an incredible way to introduce Jules to the bake shop because I think we all, every single one of us, faces a point where there's trauma or decision making or, really hard times. And it's different for all of us, whatever the triggers are or whatever happens. But so many of us, when we can, turn back to home
Mhm.
and we go home. And when we get there, we have to say, well, now what? And there's a lot to work through. And Jules' character really does a great job of, kind of just like the ups and downs of having to work through some of that stuff.
Yeah, and to, like, meet yourself in a different way in adulthood to
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, okay, who am I now in this space?" Yeah, I mean, that's just sort of, like, rich, meaty stuff that as a writer, getting to build that into a character is so great, and then, of course, because the series has gone on so much longer than I ever anticipated, it's like you with, these cookies, like, I was gonna be happy if because publishing houses usually buy these in 3-book deals. So when I got a 3-book deal, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I get to write 3 of these books. Now I'm on book 25." Like, so then over the course of all of this time with Jules, she gets to evolve too. And so
Yeah.
like as she sinks deeper into what home is and really being solid in Ashland, then her growth arc gets to change too, which is really a delight from a writing perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think the series is just fabulous, and there's so much to relate to, whether you're a baker or not. It's a really fun read. But if you are a baker, I think you mentioned a lot of your readers are bakers because
Mhm.
it really is just so relatable and so fun. And it's I think what strikes me is how you keep Jules evolving. So, where does that come from? Because you're 25 books in. Like, how do you keep evolving her story?
Yeah. It's, it's a lot of, like, resetting and also then pulling inspiration from my own life from different
Yeah.
stages. When I was first writing this book, my son was in kindergarten or with this series, and now he just graduated from college, so, like, the ebb and flow for me in motherhood, I've gotten to weave a lot of that in, and then the gift of a long-running series is that the secondary characters, everybody else who peppers in her world in the bake shop, the sous chefs and the baristas, they all get to step forward and shine, which is really
Yeah.
great because a lot of times, especially early on in developing a series, they really are pretty secondary because they just don't have a lot of time on the page. And so as things have grown and developed, then Andy, let's say her lead barista in a recent book, he got to go to Costa Rica and go on a farm tour of all the coffee farms. So like
Yeah.
they all get to kind of take center stage a little bit more too, which is fun. And it's really easy for me to sink back into this world now because I don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about how somebody's voice is. When you're first developing a series, you have to spend so much time on character development and how a character is going to move and talk and what their life triggers are, or what do they wear, what are their quirks. That's all just like in my body now.
Yeah. I guess I hadn't really thought about that as a writer or from a writer perspective. But yeah, when you are able to keep a series going and alive for so long, it really does allow you to bring other secondary characters to the forefront as you get deeper in. And like you said, you don't have to reinvent characters. You don't have
Mhm.
to reinvent stories. So you're able to go deeper with
Right.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what helps make it really relatable too, is that you can go a lot deeper than if it were just the first 3 books. It wouldn't be maybe as deep, and you wouldn't get to know as much about the characters. So
Right.
a I definitely hadn't thought about that. I mean, I'm in the world of cookies, you make them one day and they're eaten the next, and
I mean, I kind of feel the same though, because I will often get asked like, "Oh, what's your favorite book in the series?" It's always like whatever I'm writing right now,
Yeah,
because I pour so much into the book, but then when it's done, it's not mine anymore. Like it's out in the
right.
world for the readers and I'm done with it. And frankly, I don't even remember half of like what's happened in the I do, but like, if somebody
Yeah.
was going to quiz me on specifics, I'd be like, "What book was that in?" Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I am on a much smaller scale, the exact same as a cookie decorator. I do custom work. That's primarily what I do. So I get the request in, I book the order, and I am like entrenched. That week, my brain is like all in whatever's happening that week. And I am now at the point where it's like, I get to next week and I'm like, what did we do last week? I don't
Were
know.
we was it graduation? Are we weddings?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
it's because we're moving
I
on.
I'm always dying to know, do you love having a specific request from a customer, or do you love it when it's just like, do whatever you want?
I think it depends.
Mm,
It depends on the theme. So if it's like a theme that I'm like passionate about or, I have some level of connection to, it's a lot easier if they're just like, go forth. We think you'll do great. But it's also nerve-wracking in that I don't I get nervous if I'll meet expectations.
mhm.
So I think it depends. I love doing custom cookie work because of the fact that every week my schedule is very different. The requests are very different. The styles are very different. I mean, it's all my artwork, so it leans towards my style of art, but it allows for me to push myself. On designs that I would never make
Yeah.
if somebody wasn't saying, I need this theme or I need this design. I think that's a tough question because I think it really depends. There are some orders that come in that literally give me like, I had one recently that said wedding, navy, and white. And
No.
I had a panic attack
Yeah,
because I was like, a wedding? And this is what you're giving me to work with? Because usually weddings, people have expectations
right.
and, I always ask some follow-up questions if I can, but at the same time, I book so many orders, I've leaned into minimal time in the back and forth communication. And so a lot of times I'm just working off of those few things. And occasionally they don't work out and I work it out with the customer, but for the most part, people trust me and
Yeah.
they allow me to decorate to my heart's content.
So cool because you're a baker.
I am a baker, and I'm gonna own that. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure, visiting with you, Ellie, and learning a little bit about the writing process. I have a goal someday of actually publishing a book, but, it's, like, intimidating to, like, think about all the processes, but I have one in mind. It's not gonna be a fictional book, it's definitely gonna be a recipe collection.
I love
But
it. I can't wait.
but there's definitely, stories that I wanna weave in that, and, it's very inspiring listening to your journey and how you started because it's very relatable to me, right? I started cookies when my son was 1 year old, and it was, like, just a side thing, and there was a day that came that I really had to decide, "What am I gonna do, and what is important to me?" And I think the biggest thing that I had to ask myself is, if I don't take the opportunity to do it, am I going to regret it? And the
Yeah.
answer to that was always yes.
Yeah.
I would always be kicking myself of the what if. And because I did take the opportunity, now it's just, well, if it doesn't work out, at least I know.
Exactly, right? Yeah, you gotta take the risk.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, do you have any final parting words that you would share with our listeners today about, whether it's baking or reading or writing? We have a tremendous amount of listeners that are bakers and creatives and, trying to live their best life. What would you share with them?
I mean, I just think to like dovetail on your last point there, anything that we're creating in any way, shape, or form as humans right now is like the best gift that we could give to the world, is just to tap into any sense of whether that's sketching in a journal or baking a pie. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to, it's about the process. I've been talking so much to new writers about just like being in that moment, like we were talking about, being present is the gift of doing anything creative. And the more we can lean into that just as a species, I think the better.
I agree. Thank you so much for joining me on Mixing Up Success today, Ellie. It was great to have you.
Thank you so much. And now I have some ideas to weave into books. Okay.
All right. I can't wait.
Forgot to ask Ellie where to send you at the end of our conversation, so I'm sneaking in here to tell you myself. Search Ellie Alexander wherever you get your books. ELLIEALEXANDER. And start with book 1, Meet Your Baker. And if you want to follow along with her world, find her on Instagram at Ellie_Alexander. If you're a baker, a reader, or just someone who needs a good escape right now, this series was made for you.